The first letter arrived on a Monday. Emily's apartment, cluttered and dimly lit, matched her mood. Quietly chaotic. Piles of unfinished novels lay on coffee-stained tables, while half-empty cups sat forgotten, their contents long turned cold. She rarely checked the mail, but today something compelled her. She flipped open the simple cream-colored envelope and scanned the words casually. In exactly 3 days, on March 6th, 2025, you will take a life. Emily scoffed and tossed it aside. Surely a prank. Probably teenagers or someone bored at work. She forced herself to laugh, but it sounded hollow, even to her own ears. The next morning, another envelope lay neatly on her doormat, identical in every way except slightly more worn. The postmark still read March 6th, 2030. She opened it, dread pooling in her stomach. It will happen at the corner of Ash and Delancey. You won't mean to, but the blood will be on your hands. Anger flashed through her. Not funny, she whispered, ripping it to shreds. But the image haunted her thoughts all day. Ash and Delancey was only 3 blocks away, too close for comfort. She couldn't sleep that night, haunted by images of twisted metal and terrified faces. Wednesday brought the third letter, its tone now ominous and final. Time cannot be changed. The more you resist, the worse it will be. Emily felt trapped, anger mixing with her fear, furious at whoever was tormenting her. She called friends, hoping one would admit responsibility. They all sounded genuinely confused, assuring her they knew nothing. Frustration spiraled into panic. She resolved not to leave her apartment at all the next day. If fate wanted tragedy, she would deny it completely. March 6th arrived, heavy with gray skies and an oppressive chill. Emily watched the clock tick past noon, feeling relief grow as the day remained uneventful. Maybe it was just a prank after all. But at 5:30 p.m., a frantic call came from her manager at the cafe where she worked part-time. Someone called out sick. They needed her urgently for a late shift. The cafe stood dangerously close to Ash and Delancey. "Emily, please," her manager begged. "We're short-handed tonight." Against her instincts, she reluctantly agreed, determined to avoid the corner at any cost. She approached the bus stop nervously, glancing repeatedly at the corner ahead. But then she saw the crowd milling about, frustrated and annoyed. "Bus broke down," someone shouted. "Nothing's coming for an hour." Her pulse quickened. Desperation seized her. She quickly called her friend Jenna. "Can I borrow your car? Please, it's urgent." "Sure," her friend said hesitantly. "It's parked on Delancey. Keys under the seat. Just be careful." Emily sprinted toward the waiting car, heart pounding, glancing anxiously at her watch. 5:42 p.m. The car started smoothly, but her hands trembled against the wheel. She pressed the accelerator gently, determined to escape fate's grasp. But suddenly, a shadow detached from the sidewalk. A man stepping blindly into traffic. Emily slammed on the brakes. A screeching sound, a sickening thud. Her world stopped in an instant. Panting, shaking, she climbed out, feet numb, ears ringing. On the pavement, unmoving, lay the man. Her vision blurred. Voices shouted. A woman screamed somewhere nearby, but Emily's focus narrowed on something else entirely. A letter, neatly folded beside the victim. She picked it up with trembling fingers. I told you. Her eyes darted to the postmark. March 6th, 2030. She dropped it, stumbling backward as sirens wailed closer. After weeks of interviews, investigations, and sympathy masked by suspicion, Emily became withdrawn. She locked herself away, jumping at every knock or creak. Friends stopped visiting, confused and hurt by her sudden distance. And yet, the letters continued to arrive, each darker than the last, each predicting more deaths. June 15th, 2025. A woman named Anna, poison. December 21st, 2025. Jacob from a party. A fall. She began to fear her mailbox, her hands shaking each time she unfolded another prophecy of horror. Emily did everything she could to avoid harming others. She quit her job, severed friendships, isolated herself entirely. But circumstances twisted inexplicably, each time forcing her hand, pulling her into situations she never could have imagined. Anna, the friendly barista from the coffee shop, somehow consumed something deadly after Emily innocently gifted her tea. Jacob, a mutual friend, fell from a rooftop during a holiday party. She had merely been joking, playfully pushing him. He'd stumbled back, losing balance. Each death tied to her. Each incident matched precisely with the letter's predictions. Haunted by guilt, Emily spiraled deeper into paranoia. She searched endlessly for answers, confronting friends, stalking strangers. Who was behind this sick game? Who knew her life better than she did? She barricaded herself inside her apartment, curtains drawn, lights dimmed, convinced isolation would save others from her fate. But still, the letters arrived. You can't run. You can't hide. You were always meant to do this. Emily tried the police, desperate for help. They dismissed her as hysterical, leaving her alone with her torment. Friends distanced themselves. Neighbors whispered behind closed doors. By the second year, Emily no longer knew who she was. Her identity faded under layers of fear and paranoia. Each letter was an indictment, another condemnation from a future she couldn't fathom. As months turned into years, Emily stopped resisting. She surrendered to the inevitability foretold by each new letter, her life controlled by forces she no longer understood. People became distant memories, accidents blurred into one another, lives lost without reason or explanation. The weight of guilt numbed her until she was hollow, simply existing as fate's puppet. And always, the letters guided her path. On March 6, 2030, the date etched deeply into her nightmares, Emily stood on the familiar corner of Ash and Delancey, a shell of who she once was. 5 years had passed since the first death. Now, she waited for something she couldn't escape. A final letter rested in her pocket, received that very morning. Today, you will finally understand. She stared into the empty street, breath ragged, heart numb. Footsteps approached slowly behind her, deliberate, familiar. Emily turned slowly, facing a woman, her own reflection, worn and weary, but unmistakably older. The older Emily smiled gently, eyes hollow. "You sent the letters," Emily whispered, voice cracking. "Why?" "Because you needed to understand," the older Emily replied calmly. "We always think we control our future, but our fate is decided by moments we cannot see until it's too late." Tears streamed down Emily's face. "I don't want this. I never did." "You never had a choice," her older self said softly, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "We live the consequences of choices we never even knew we made." Emily reached into her pocket, pulling out the letter, its words clearer now. "Today, you will finally understand." A figure stepped into the street, a young woman laughing into her phone, unaware of the car speeding towards her. Emily moved instinctively, racing forward, shouting a warning as she pushed the stranger out of harm's way just as the car slammed into her own fragile body. As darkness swallowed her, Emily understood. All along, the letters hadn't been a threat. They had been a warning, guiding her here to this sacrifice. She had taken lives before, but this last act, her own death, was the only way to break the cycle. On the pavement lay one last letter, untouched by the chaos around her, postmarked from 2030. "Fate is sealed. Rest now, Emily. Your future is finally at peace."